Glad to have with me a dear friend who every time I talk to Luna Stower, I could go on for hours and hours and hours. She always gives me amazing insight to the industry, into business and to life. Luna is the CIO, this Chief Impact Officer at Aspire, one of the largest vape manufacturers in the world, one of the very first to go public on NASDAQ at $1 billion valuation. We're thrilled to have Luna to come talk with us today about all kinds of stuff, but mostly about diversity, equity, inclusion. What does that really mean? What does that mean to a business? And as your role as Chief Impact Officer at Aspire, help us understand, why would a business make this kind of investment in this space? Why does it make bottom line sense? And I love some of the terms you've thrown at me. So go at it, Luna. Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, the triple bottom line, it's something that, whether or not it's done with authentic, genuine purpose, or if they're just doing it to check off the corporate social responsibility box, a lot of companies are understanding that showing up in a real way and not just in flashy or transactional ways, the market, whether it's a B2B or B2C market, notices that. If we're trying to build customer loyalty or buy-in, or for folks to stick with us through hard times, whatever the kind of customer acquisition, goal is, having something sticky like, an interesting podcast that features women of color in the space who are, killing it. Give back in the sense of donations or cleanups or different kinds of nonprofit organizations that are working to get folks out of prison, or addressing the harms of the war on drugs. When there's a story behind it, we've seen it in other markets too. It's really important. It's a way for us to connect with a brand or a business or a service that just the service alone doesn't do. There's an ethereal nature to the give back that, some people, like I said, just are checking a box. But the ones that really get it and put a lot of energy into it, we see, a huge morale boost in both the employees that work there, the clients that they're servicing, and the end consumer that uses it. I mean, it's the good karma idea, right? If you're putting something good into something that you're making, ideally it's going to come back and be abundant, which is supportive to the business model.
I think the key word that I keep hearing is authenticity. And that's hard to do, because how many people are out there saying that your position isn't really authentic? It's really a check the box. So how do
Right.
you balance that? How does a company check the box and be authentic and real? So what are some of the types of things you do that make it real?
Yeah. I mean, you'll see some folks that, are only posting activism around like gay pride or Black History Month. The community notices that, right? If you're not showing up when, for example, Sonoma County growers are rallying and Humboldt is rallying right now to support small farmers. You don't see some of these big companies that wave certain flags at certain times showing up to when the veterans need them. And we as a B2B community know who actually is in those giveaway bags, who is signing the petitions, who are showing up on lobby days, who are putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to public safety, or to working with legislators to make sure that policy is looking out for everyone, not just businesses. We really are watching how each other moves. So I think that that's the first and most important thing is, are you doing things as a perfunctory, show of optics, or are you really embedding that into the culture? How many women of color or people impacted by the war on drugs are actually in positions of power and ownership in your company? It's one thing to have the labor or the junior level, segment of your business be female, or be folks of color, or be indigenous, but how many of them are actually managing groups, having, either stock options or some kind of equity in the business? These are questions that I don't think are being asked enough. And so I think that it's given DEI, just like feminism, all these things that were born of a real need, get
Right.
perverted and reappropriated in weird ways, and have strong connotations where people have utilized that term, whether it's Black Lives Matter movement, all of these movements, even just the cannabis industry, they've become such divisive and triggering language that really we need to talk about exactly what we're talking about. When we're talking about DEI, we're not talking about, this argument about affirmative action. We're acknowledging that there is a system in place currently and in the past that has disadvantaged certain people. if we can honor, uphold, highlight, buoy, support, collaborate with those people and name their lived experience and how it's still playing out in the world, I don't see how that is like fake woke or creating divisive racial lines. I think that the problem we have in this country, as a world, and as an industry is we don't take accountability. We don't acknowledge, and I think that the basic act of seeing people and saying, I'm sorry, Northern California growers, you've had decades of being raided, having your assets forfeited, having your dog shot, having your kids taken by child protective services. We acknowledge that you have given all of the genetics and the growing techniques and the IP to the greater world that is, everyone uses the word Cali, whether you're in Germany, Argentina, doesn't matter where you are. Cali means one thing, well-grown weed based on a lot of different reasons, but there's no just acknowledgement of like, hey man, props, like Prop 64 just came and erased the whole Prop 215 patient collective model. And I don't believe that we can continue growing as an industry if we're standing on the shoulders of things that we're not aware of, or if we're not um, giving proper burial to the skeletons of the past and being able to move on in that way.
So again, the key word is authentic engagement. It's authentic, and it's not just engaging with all the stakeholder. That's the consumers, that's your distributors, that's pretty much everybody in the market you're trying to engage with in an authentic way. Again, help us understand what that means. You have a travel schedule that just blows my mind. I mean, 5 countries in 3 months, and it's taken us 4 months to get this time together. Thank you. I feel honored. So you're doing this not just in California where you are, but you're spreading this message globally.
Yeah, I mean, cannabis is worldwide. I've been to, I go to Spain every year. Germany's legalizing. We go there for ICBC. Um, I just got back from Thailand. Even Japan has CBD cafes and vape shops open and edibles. Hong Kong was not as friendly. But yeah, Argentina, Uruguay was last year, and they're both going off right now. Uruguay is in an incredible position to export, import. Yeah, there's so much excitement in the community right now, and actually investors are interested in getting in. This kind of knee-jerk reaction that we saw in the market, that was, a lot of dramatic peaks and valleys, I think is evening out and becoming a little bit more mature and more wise and more realistic than the rosy outlooks of the past that crushed a lot of dreams and businesses, and made people make really bad decisions that are still impacting us to this day and probably will always. But yeah, that because we're just supply chain, right? Like we're just hardware. So we don't touch the plant. We are in, raw materials and manufacturing and logistics essentially. And then also we have a whole side that does the branding, the culture, the design, that make it that authentic. So even though we manufacture in China, our entire team is American. All these vapes that you see right here were designed and, for the most part, either assembled or customized in the United States, in Los Angeles. So those kinds of things, when you're working with people, there's a lot of options in the market. And for most people we work with, they really appreciate that we're on American time, that we speak their language, that we understand their culture, that we come from the culture. And it doesn't feel like this nameless, faceless translator app that's 15 hours behind or ahead of you at any given time. So I think that that's really important for building trust in the California cannabis and the hemp, and also even the nicotine industries that we serve with our vape pens, to just know that like we're GMP ISO certified. We are working on EU GMP and all of the things that come along with that. We're working on a lot of initiatives to ensure safe practices and policing even ourselves, because we don't have a regulatory board for vape really, and we want to step up and do that work ourselves to get ahead of the regulators. The PMTA is a real thing. The PACT Act is a real thing impacting us. There's vape bans. There's a lot of negativity in the market, even though the demand is going up, the bans are too. And so with that, you always see the underground. So we believe that black market vapes are the real cause of EVALI and all of these vape crises. And we want to be on the good side because we know people want vape. It's proven. There's no argument about it. Doesn't matter if you love it. Doesn't matter if you hate it. Everyone either vapes or wants to vape. So if we don't do it in a safe way that ensures that no one's getting, harmed by the materials, and that it's being tracked and traced, through our NFC chips and we're using extremely high tech methods to ensure, even taking away the caps, we have a self-sealing unit that fills from below and you don't get popping, clogging, or any contaminants in it. I mean, we're being extremely careful because we know the world's watching. If anyone saw a big vape and what happened with Juul, we're aware of what harms vape has done, and we're trying to do better. And I think that transparency, that vulnerability, that honesty is what makes iSpire different. A lot of people act like they have it all together. And we do as much as we can, but this is a completely Wild West style industry and space in general. But then also within the hardware space in and of itself, we're doing our best to try to bring some integrity to Chinese manufacturing where it hasn't typically been.
Right. Well, I mean, it really comes down to branding, and it's one of the things that as you build your brand at iSpire, and as brands are trying to develop worldwide, how do you? I mean, branding is one of those weird things. How do you? What goes into branding? Again, it comes into engagement with that customer. It comes into that authentic engagement with that customer. That's how you get the feedback. Talk to me about that, because I look at your designs and I look at your and it just every time I go by your booth at one of the shows and I see these really innovative, cool colors and like you said, that not just the technical design but the style design, that really is what drives a lot of your business.
Yeah, I'll have to shout out Jeff Duran, our chief experience officer. He's been since day one so art forward. Like most Chinese hardware brands do not have a full-time videography, photography, social media team. We throw First Friday events as part of Venice Art Walk, which has Abbott Kinney First Fridays. We let the public into our offices. We are extremely art forward. Even the shirt that I'm wearing, like it's super, super creative. Like
yeah,
this is not what you would expect from a Chinese hardware manufacturer.
right.
It's very we want to feel reflective of the people that are using it, which is weird because normally in B2B, you're just thinking about what your immediate customer is, not really the end customer. For us, they're all our customers. Like we know that even though the end customer doesn't know that cookies or napalm or Wonder Bread or Cali Heights is filled into iSpire hardware, we don't really technically need them to know that, but they can already tell that there's a cool factor in it that's imperceptible and subconscious that, like you said, it's part of the branding exercise is showing what our values are, and our value is culture. Culture is a main pillar of iSpire's value set, because no one's here just to make money and make vapes. No one wakes up in the mornings like, I want to manufacture hardware. We're saying we believe in balm, rosin, and oil. We want to support the hash makers. And I know that when you're traveling, vaping is the easiest. Or if you have mobility issues, vaping is the easiest. As a public school teacher, when you have 5-minute breaks, vaping is the easiest. This is an access to medicine issue, and that's what vape provides. So it's just a vehicle for us, to support.
I mean, another key word that you brought out is culture, and you're a culture brand, and a culture brand, I think, has to think more about DE&I than anybody,
Of
because
course.
your consumers are diverse, and you don't want to ever produce a brand that might unintentionally offend one sector. I'm sure that goes into a lot of your thinking of your job and how you design your products.
Well, yeah, and also, I mean, having a diverse team, if we have Black, brown, indigenous, female, women on a creative team, it's less likely that they're going to do an off-color holiday spread. You know what I mean? Like like I'm Jewish, we did a menorah with, instead of the oil, the oil burning, they were oil cartridges in the menorah. I mean, these are things that people get nervous about. If you have a Jew on staff, you check it with them. Yeah, it's funny. It's cool. I check with my rabbi. It's fine. It's not disrespectful. It's a cultural and not a religious holiday anyway. Or like the Chinese New Year, or we're Chinese owned. Our CEO is Chinese. Like, we're not abstracting these things. We're, when we have our Black senior marketing director, helping run, our Black History Month programming of what resonates with him and his community. It's not fake. You don't, if you are having to hire consultants into your space, or you're having to like Google things, or like ask your nephew and niece what to do, you're probably not hiring the right folks. Because diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't just in the content and in the branding. Like I said before, it needs to be in the actual decision-making process, or else you're gonna leave yourself open to probably well-deserved critiques.
It's DEI is a politically charged term, and clinical trial recruiting, which is another area that we work in, it comes down to science and math. Recent Alzheimer's drug was just approved. They had 1,700 participants in the study, and only 50 were of color. And so they're not really sure if this drug actually works for the African American population because they only had such a small participation. So when we're talking about when we're talking about DE&I, it's a very broad term that I like to say really does come down to science and math. That it's not optional, because if we have a diverse world that we're marketing to, we have to know how to do that. And I think
yeah,
that's
it's the math, and it's also the humanization and accountability piece. It's just like, be honest about what's going on. Just stop acting like certain people are getting treated different. Like, to me, it just is about honesty. And I think that we need that in the cannabis industry too, is more honesty, more transparency, more accountability. We will build so much more trust and build so much more financial resources and power and lobbying, power. Like, I just got an email from Alex Padilla, the Secretary of State of California, this morning, being like, thanks for writing me the petition about, because there was like an issue with the veterans getting access to cannabis or being barred from cannabis or something. And I signed a petition, and he wrote back, I'm very pro cannabis for medical and recreational purposes. And thank you for your blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, the people are ready. Like, the hearts and minds have been won in California specifically. Even at the highest levels, we already know Gavin Newsom is very positive, and even looking towards, psilocybin and other psychedelic and entheogenic modalities for trauma-based healing and therapeutic use. So I'm just waiting. Hopefully it'll happen soon. I'm really happy to be doing this work with folks like you, like Marshall, people in the world that are caring more about the legacy they're leaving and what opportunities they're creating than capitalizing on, just seeing a greed capitalist perspective of what can be done in the cannabis industry and see the whole bigger picture of what we can be doing.
Yeah, well, to your point, and to our dear friend Marshall, who we're both acquainted with, it's an obligation in a nascent industry. It's our obligation to try and bring best practices,
Yes.
because these are practices that will last forever. It takes years to establish good practices, and it takes minutes to get rid of bad practices. So the work that you're doing now, I applaud you. The work that we're trying to do as an industry, it's an honor to be part of that team that's trying to do the right thing. And I thank you so much for joining us today and talking about your views of the world and telling us about your wonderful travels. And what an amazing company, iSpire. I'm so proud to see what you've accomplished, and I look forward to seeing you in person really soon.
Likewise. Thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate you both.